And now back to 80/20 estate planning. Here's your host, estate planning expert, Al Gibbons.
Welcome back to 80/20 estate planning. This is Al Gibbons with Brian Titus and Alan Mittelman. And Alan, we were just talking about paying estate taxes, and we were talking about life insurance in this regard. And it seems to me one scenario that you described is if we had a liquid estate, we could just pay $1 for $1. And if we had a $10 million estate and owed $5 million in estate taxes, we could take it directly out of the estate. I guess we could borrow money if we didn't have it. That would be a possibility. We could maintain a large cash reserve. Or in other cases, and as Brian had mentioned, a very accepted technique is to purchase life insurance. And I guess my question is, Brian, is it cost effective to purchase life insurance? None of us like to buy life insurance. Why is it an accepted technique, and is it cost effective?
Well, we certainly think it's cost effective, and probably a reason why we sell quite a bit of it. I should point out that there may be many people who don't really aren't familiar with the second to die life insurance. I mean, that's not all we sell, and individuals are not all married individuals even buy second to die life insurance. But second to die life insurance is relatively less expensive than so-called single life insurance because you're insuring two people, and the mortality cost, the chance of both people dying at any one time, is so much less than a single individual dying that there's a certain cost savings, if I can put it that way, to buying the second to die life insurance. So the upshot is that the premiums relative to the death benefit in a second to die policy are relatively small, certainly smaller, less than they would be in a single life policy for those actuarial reasons. And that's part of the attraction of life insurance.
Yeah, I think that's an important point because that is what is often used for estate tax planning.
Correct.
Not necessarily estate planning, estate tax planning.
Correct.
And if we think in terms of relative premium, I'm thinking about a case that I was involved with last year. As a matter of fact, Phoenix was one of the carriers used, and for a couple in their mid to late 40s, $40 million of insurance under the assumptions we used cost $180,000 a year for 10 years, or $1.8 million.
Right.
Over 10 years to get $40 million tax-free.
Right, and I think some people are very surprised. Many people are very surprised by the cost of second to die insurance. Young, healthy people, relatively young, healthy people in their 50s and 60s can buy quite a bit for what we think are relatively affordable premiums. So the solutions that second to die and the unlimited marital deduction have offered are much greater than they were 25 years ago, I think. And for many people, that's a much more acceptable solution to paying estate taxes than either liquidating assets at death or borrowing money or taking the chance of having to sell assets. Even if you have marketable securities, boy, who would want to sell a big portfolio of marketable securities today if death were to occur today, or to take the chance that would happen? And there's some pretty good comparisons that have been done by many people and many institutions over the years, comparing the cost of paying with cash at death, borrowing money, selling assets, or life insurance. And while it's not always true that life insurance is a solution, in many cases it simply requires the least amount of outlay for any given period of time.
Alan, let me ask you a question. Would you agree with this statement that in almost every significant estate, and an estate planning case, in almost everyone, life insurance is at least considered a potential solution? Now, it may not turn out to be effective because of health or other things, but is it almost always considered?
Al, actually, I thought you were quoting me when you started to make that statement, and then I realized that you weren't, because in the past, I believe I've said many times that I have rarely seen any estate plan for any high net worth person that does not incorporate life insurance in some way. It's extraordinarily rare, and it is because of the inherent leverage of life insurance and because of the certainty it brings to uncertain situations. But if I may, come back to something else you were just talking about, the concentration on second to die as a solution. I find that to be overrated in one respect, and that's that I happen to have a like for flexible solutions. And to me, second to die is less flexible than first to die coverage, in the sense that even though it costs more to insure maybe one life because the person will probably die sooner, as the future changes, and it always does, I like the idea of having money available for the surviving spouse in an irrevocable trust, which you don't have that possibility with the second to die coverage. And so I'm not always in favor of just second to die life insurance to provide insurance for the tax as the tax solution, but maybe some balance between the first to die policy, people insuring the husband if the husband is the breadwinner, or insuring the wife if the wife is the breadwinner, so that the surviving spouse who may need some of that capital at the first death will have it available.
Well, let's talk about that, and let's shift just a little bit, and let's presume. I guess in my practice, I don't know the exact percentage, but I would say that only 50% in estate planning and estate tax planning is second to die. But estate planning, on the other hand, calls for perhaps a first to die or an individual policy, for example, on the husband, as you mentioned. So probably half my business is like that. Let's talk about that. Let's assume for a moment that there may or may not be an estate tax. Give me an example when you would like to see a first to die. For example, Alan, you are an expert on total return trusts. What's the point on that stuff as it relates to this?
Well, it's completely different, I think. Can I answer the first part of your question first to come back to that?
Yep.
I would give you an example. I just came out of a meeting no more than 10 minutes before the radio show where we have somebody who was buying second to die life insurance to cover estate taxes. Now, they also have a first to die policy insuring the husband who was the breadwinner. And at his death, the wife still feels that she may have some need for money. She feels uncertain with the way the stock market has performed lately. There's an awful lot of people who were multimillionaires who today are not even millionaires. And the future is uncertain. So there's nothing wrong with guaranteeing that there will be a substantial amount of money from insurance or other sources to make sure that the surviving spouse has sufficient assets at one spouse's death. If the money is not needed, then the trust that we're going to set up will just provide that it will accumulate. And then when she later dies, there will be additional money is available for estate taxes for the family. So I think we've got double duty out of the insurance, and that makes me feel a lot more comfortable, especially if the estate tax law changes.
So what you're saying is you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. You're looking for multiple uses of $1, some different strategies, and maybe a combination of coverages.
Absolutely, and diversification, I think, is the rule, which would then bring us to the total return trust. You like that?
Yes, I do. Excellent segue.
Now, if you would you like to ask a question about
the reason I brought that up is I think that focuses people on the payout and the amount of money that's being paid to the surviving spouse. I think it's pretty clear. Can you describe that?
Yeah. Well, too many people, when they're setting up trusts, only think about the trust as a way to accumulate money and to pay taxes, and they don't really think about how the trust is going to operate when one person dies and when a person really becomes a beneficiary. And they don't think about how the beneficiary is going to get money and what types of trouble and conflicts may develop in making investment decisions and distribution decisions. And the total return trust, which we've been, I think, been very played an important role in developing this concept, tries to address these answers or these questions with solutions which hopefully will assist the spouse in getting steady, reliable distributions and will encourage the trustee to invest smartly for the long run.
Okay, I think this is important, Alan. I don't want to cut it short, so let's take a commercial and let's come back on the other side and finish up on this total return trust. We're at the heart of estate planning now, right after the break.
80/20 Estate Planning will return after these short messages. Mortality. Who dwells on it? But when it comes to planning your estate, it's never too early to start. For smart ways to get the most from your estate and planning team, you need to hear Al Gibbons, creator of the heralded 80/20 Estate Plan. Implement 80% of the planning you need in 20% of the time it normally takes, from A to Z in 60 days. Contact AEG Financial Services today at 610-917-8940 or email them at algibbons@algibbons.com for more information about Al's expert services and related products. Al Gibbons of AEG Financial Services is a highly respected expert in the complicated and often confusing world of estate planning. Put his years of experience in dealing with real situations to work for you. Contact AEG Financial Services today. Call 610-917-8940. That's 610-917-8940 or email algibbons@algibbons.com.
Money. It's just not what it used to be. Among other things, it's younger. But new money and old money have at least one thing in common. Phoenix, a company that's been helping people manage wealth for nearly 150 years. Phoenix understands that making money and knowing what to do with it are two very different skills. Call 1-888-456-3451 or visit us at phoenixwm.com. We can bring harmony to your life, if not to your music.
It's only natural. Dr. Terry Chesky's Holistic Health Hour. It's on the air every Saturday from 3 to 4 p.m. During this informative and entertaining hour, Dr. Chesky will bring the world of natural health and medicine to you, the listener. Dr. Chesky is a psychotherapist, clinical hypnotherapist, and practitioner of naturopathic medicine. So tune in every Saturday from 3 to 4 p.m. for It's Only Natural, Dr. Terry Chesky's Holistic Health Hour, right here on your alternative, WALE 990.
Wednesday, 7:30 to 8 p.m. Tune in and sharpen up. Is the end of this earth age upon us? Will you be unprepared and caught by a thief in the night? Or will you take the time to learn what God has revealed to his sheep in his word? Tune into the show that has been compared to Orson Welles, the End Time Bible Prophecy Show, with host Valerie Klein, author of The Diana Prophecy, and learn about the return of fallen angels, who the Antichrist is, and the coming of the New World Order. Wednesdays at 7:30, right here on WALE.
Talk to our expert host. In the Providence area, call 621-WALE. Outside the Providence area, call toll-free, 1-877-621-WALE.
And now back to 80/20 Estate Planning. Here's your host, estate planning expert, Al Gibbons.
Welcome back to 80/20 Estate Planning, and my guest, Brian Titus, Vice President, Phoenix Home Life, Hartford, Connecticut, and also Alan Mittelman, Chairman of the Estate Planning and Administration Department at Spector, Gadon, and Rosen, a premier law firm in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Welcome back, gentlemen. We were talking, Alan, you are an expert in total return trusts, and we were talking about this as sort of the heart of estate planning, and we were talking about using not only second-to-die coverage for estate taxes, but individual or first death coverage for estate planning. And we were talking about perhaps this total return trust or this discussion of the payouts refocusing us on the adequacy of the capital set aside for the surviving spouse. Is that working in your practice? Are people becoming more aware of what they need?
Well, I think the answer is yes, but it's an education process, and they don't come into the meetings knowing about these things, so they have to get. It's definitely an education job for us. But most people, I think, figure out the concept once it's explained to them. Basically, what we discuss is that when you leave a lot of money in trust for a surviving spouse or for a child, they want to know how they're going to get their money. And many trusts are just not drafted well in that regard. They pay all the income to the spouse or to the child, and income only means dividends and interest. It doesn't mean capital gains. So the spouse in those kinds of trusts encourages the trustee to invest in bonds and high-yielding investments, but they give up the growth to get that result. But that's what they want because that's the only way that they get money easily out of the trust, payment of the income. When we design a total return trust, what we do is we instruct the trustee to invest the smartest way to get the best total return without regard to generating income. Again, income meaning dividends and interest, not capital gains. And so when they can invest for total return, they can focus on capital gains, and then hopefully the trust will grow year after year. Of course, there's always going to be some down years, but we hope that for the long run, there'll be nice growth. Now, when we design a trust like that, though, we have to make it as what we call a unit trust. So it's actually a total return unit trust. And a unit trust provides a percentage payout to the surviving spouse or to the children. So if we figure that a trust has a starting value of, let's say, $1 million, if we have a payout of 5% a year, that's $50,000.
Alan, let me stop you there.
Yeah.
I think that focuses people. $1 million sounds like a lot. $50,000 doesn't sound like nearly as much to the surviving spouse.
No, it doesn't. And when it's in the trust, they just can't liquidate that money. And of course, it wouldn't be wise to just liquidate the $1 million anyway, because you're trying to preserve the money for those uncertain years ahead, and then for the children. So we have a regular, steady payout. If the money in the trust is invested wisely, the $1 million will grow year after year, because a well-managed portfolio ought to be able to earn more than 4 or 5% a year, which is our typical payout. So a good chunk of the money is distributed automatically every year. The spouse doesn't have to worry that the trust is not investing in bonds to generate interest income. And the remainder beneficiaries are quite happy because the principal is growing. So we've got a happy spouse getting more and more money every year because the principal is growing. And you've got happy remaindermen. And you've got a trustee who has only one job. That's just to make the trust grow.
And you probably have a happy insurance professional, because typically in the past, an awful lot of people have not had enough capital available to generate the kind of income that you were talking about.
Well, that's absolutely correct. And in fact, what I noticed over the last decade is as people started concentrating only on tax selling and funding trusts just for tax purposes, they lost sight of, well, how's the money going to be paid out and how much is the spouse really going to get? Now we're forcing people to focus on what's the smart way to deploy the trust, to invest it, and what's the smart way to design it to have regular, reliable distributions. And then once you figure out what the distributions are going to be, then the family can focus on the bottom line, which is how much capital do we need to produce that cash flow. And that's where we get back to insurance.
And we are right in the midst of estate planning. Now, it seems to me, as usual, we could spend hours and hours and hours on these topics, and we only have a few minutes left. I want to talk about some techniques where life insurance is used. What about life insurance to help facilitate charitable giving in estate planning, Brian?
We've seen a great resurgence in the use of a charitable remainder trust over the last 5 to 10 years. Certainly, charitable remainder trust, in a very, very brief description, is a charitable gift and trust in which the creator of the trust retains some use of the money, some income from the trust for a period of time, maybe even for a lifetime, and after which the money then passes to a charity. And it offers some really attractive tax benefits to an individual who does that.
But if I've given money away, haven't I disinherited my kids?
Exactly. Everybody's happy except the heirs in that case, and it's usually the case. It's often the case, I should say, that the income and the tax benefits produced by this strategy are sufficient to allow the creator to also purchase life insurance, to create a separate trust which has become known in the industry as a wealth replacement trust, which owns a comparable amount of life insurance, which is paid for by gifts from the grantor. So at one fell swoop, the individuals generated income and tax benefits from assets that probably didn't exist before, lowered his estate for estate tax purposes, and recreated the asset in an estate tax environment. Now, we can debate all day long about how appropriate this is for most individuals, and sometimes I think even this concept is oversold, but in the right circumstances, it produces fairly dynamic results.
So let's come back right after the break, and I want to talk about 3 or 4 techniques in a few minutes and talk about how life insurance is used in estate planning right after the break.
80/20 Estate Planning will return after these short messages. Mortality. Who dwells on it? But when it comes to planning your estate, it's never too early to start. For smart ways to get the most from your estate and planning team, you need to hear Al Gibbons, creator of the heralded 80/20 Estate Plan. Implement 80% of the planning you need in 20% of the time it normally takes, from A to Z in 60 days. Contact AEG Financial Services today at 610-917-8940 or email them at algibbons@algibbons.com for more information about Al's expert services and related products. Al Gibbons of AEG Financial Services is a highly respected expert in the complicated and often confusing world of estate planning. Put his years of experience in dealing with real situations to work for you. Contact AEG Financial Services today. Call 610-917-8940. That's 610-917-8940 or email algibbons@algibbons.com.
Today's money. It's not just who you are, it's what you're made of. It's not just having a name, it's making one. Not just being, but creating. In fact, 8 out of 10 today's millionaires aren't inheriting their money, they're earning it. That's not just evolution, that's revolution. And one company understands how money has changed, and that company is Phoenix. Call 1-888-456-3451 or visit us at phoenixwm.com, because money is not what it used to be.
30 years ago, Texas Instruments changed the way children learn and teachers teach. We invented the electronic handheld calculator. That was just the beginning. Since 1967, by listening and responding to the special needs of educators and students, we have developed a set of powerful and innovative instructional tools. You'll find features and functionalities ideally matched to mathematics and science concepts, all designed to make education more interesting and effective. Today, Texas Instruments continues to introduce cutting-edge handheld educational tools like the TI-92 and the TI-83. Give a child a gift with 30 years of history and a bright future. Buy a Texas Instruments calculator for back to school at a retailer near you. For more information about Texas Instruments solutions, visit online at www.ti.com/CALC.
Money. It's just not what it used to be. Among other things, it's younger. But new money and old money have at least one thing in common. Phoenix, a company that's been helping people manage wealth for nearly 150 years. Phoenix understands that making money and knowing what to do with it are two very different skills. Call 1-888-456-3451 or visit us at phoenixwm.com. We could bring harmony to your life, if not to your music.
You're listening to Southern New England's Talk Alternative, offering the most unique program, 990 WALE Renaissance Radio.
And now back to 80/20 Estate Planning. Here's your host, estate planning expert, Al Gibbons.
Welcome back, and welcome back to our guests, Brian Titus and Alan Mittelman. And we're going to hop right into it, gentlemen. Let's talk about 3 or 4 techniques as we wrap up this show where life insurance is used in estate planning. Brian, it seems to me there's going to still be outstanding debts at death that people will want cleared up. It certainly is true in what are called IRD assets, in qualified plans, the taxes that are due, and so forth, and people will want to replace those dollars lost to taxes and to debt. Do you see that as...
Yes, that's certain. This whole notion of estate tax reform and repeal has started us focusing on other cash needs that occur at death or generated by death or just exist at death. And you've pointed to a couple of them. Debts, for one thing, especially business debts. Many business owners would like debts retired and whole at death so their spouses or heirs don't have to worry about it. assets such as pension plans and IRAs and deferred compensation arrangements will result in ordinary income taxes, tax liability for the beneficiaries. And some individuals might feel the need to alleviate those liabilities at some point in time. Also, there's an interesting argument about capital gains taxes. If cost basis is not stepped up at death, it might even be on the capital gains liability. So some of those expenses, some state owners may want to deal with, even though there is not an estate tax to deal with as such.
Alan, one of the things that I think we've all run into are clients who feel obligated to leave. I was in a conversation yesterday on this. Clients who feel obligated to leave money to their children and to leave them in a good position. And yet there's always this tension then with how much money they can spend on themselves. Now, while I can't make decisions for my clients, I believe that they should take care of their own interests first, and whatever is left over goes to the children. But that's not maybe exactly how they see it. So one thing I see people do in estate planning is to guarantee that there's some money in the future for the children at the death of the first or second spouse, whatever, and it gives them this ability to spend down their assets without any guilt or concern that their children and grandchildren will be left without resources. Does that seem like an appropriate solution for life insurance?
Sure.
Okay.
Sounds like a good idea for one of the eliminating the burden of having to worry about what you give your children, I think, is a marvelous idea.
And I guess what we get to, there are so many practical solutions where cash will solve the problems, cash at future delivery, and life insurance can often handle that in an economical position or in an economical way. We've talked about charitable giving. We've talked about estate tax planning. We've talked about estate planning. We've handled a lot of topics today. We could go on for hours and hours, but it's time to wrap up. I want to thank my guests. I want to thank Alan Mittelman of Spector, Gadon, and Rosen in Philadelphia, one of the really bright young attorneys in Philadelphia, and thank you for being on the show with us, Alan. I want to thank Brian Titus from Phoenix Home Life, who does an outstanding job for life insurance professionals and their clients across the country. And I want to thank Phoenix Home Life for being a sponsor for this series and the great job that they've done. And I've enjoyed using them as a company to help satisfy my clients' needs in many cases. So thank you to all of you. It was a great show, and we'll look forward to seeing and talking to our listeners again next week. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to 80/20 Estate Planning with your host, Al Gibbons. You can tune in to our live broadcast every Tuesday at 4 p.m. If you would like to contact Al Gibbons, you may email him at algibbons@algibbons.com or mail your questions and comments to AEG Financial Services, The Commons at Valley Forge, 1288 Valley Forge Road, number 53, Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, 19460-2681.